Today, Community Planning Conversations will be with an elected citizen planner, Brandon Bowersox. He's a member of the Urbana City Council. Welcome, Brandon. Thank you
I'm
for
glad to be
coming
here.
and joining in the conversation. Well, I think we might start with some of the books that you brought with us that you read as part of your stimulating your thoughts about community planning. And I'd like you to start with some of those. And as you talk about them, that might help you engage in why you ran for the city council and your interest in
hmm
city government.
Definitely. Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, Urbana launched into doing a downtown strategic plan, and there were group workshops and study sessions and sort of charrette meetings and meetings of downtown business owners. Um, and I was a downtown business owner. We used to be on Goose Alley years ago, the company where I work, and I got interested and went to these meetings and started to see how they worked and see what our downtown could be and learn about issues of civic planning. And my eyes were opened to public space in this country and how public space can be walkable and serve the people and bikeable, and the fact that most of us don't even think about it and we just use the public space, be it the highways or the roads, and our eyes aren't really open to the design of it. And some of it is designed for people and designed very well so that people feel safe coming out and using it and get to meet their neighbors and talk to them. And others of it isn't designed that way and makes it hard to get from your home to your work, or hard to see your neighbors, or puts obstructions in the ways of walking and biking. So a few of the books that I brought with me today are books that over these last number of years have helped me sort of open my eyes to the public space and to actually thinking from a design perspective about the things that I see around me every day. And so one of the books, the book I recommend most is this book called Suburban Nation, The Rise of Sprawl and the Decline of the American Dream by Duane, Plater, Zyberk, and Speck. And it is a wonderful book that is eye-opening, that makes you think and start watching what's around you and seeing what's there and thinking critically about, oh, well, why is it that I can't just walk to that store that's right behind my house, but because there's some obstruction there, I have to, walk 3 miles around to a bunch of streets to the big road, back into the small road, and there aren't even sidewalks or there aren't even crosswalks for me. And so hence I don't do that, and nor do my kids, and I end up getting in my car to go to the store even though I can see it from my house.
Um, just to point out, Andres Duani was in our community a couple of years ago and did a program for community members who wanted to come and learn a bit more about just what you are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is available at the public library.
I'm sure we have a copy at the Urbana Free Library and Champaign, and I bet the university too. It's
Yes.
a great book. There's also, all the books that I'll mention are also listed on my website, which is ward4.org. And if you click on bike and walk resources, there's a list of these books and even a link there to how you can order it from Pages for All Ages, which is a local bookseller here.
Very helpful for your constituents.
And everyone, I hope. The second book that I have to share with you is called The Life and Death of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs. And it is a classic book that is also eye-opening, which is sort of a theme for these books that I want to share with you. It describes in New York City, in Manhattan, how during the 60s and during changes in urban planning and ideas of creating big roads through Manhattan so that it would be less congested, how somebody in a neighborhood, Jane Jacobs, decided to challenge a road building project that would have torn down Washington Square Park, which is a very functional and very highly used park in Manhattan, if you're not familiar with it.
Toward the tip of the island.
Yes, towards the southern tip of the island. And the idea was, let's tear down the park so that we can put a bigger road through there and really move traffic north to south much better. And Jane Jacobs sort of led the effort among a number of neighbors to say, wait a second, this is public space and it's valuable, and I think when we're designing roads and streets, we're really missing lots of what's important about them. And so the book is a wonderful study of how the streetscape and how sidewalks work, and she does things like tell you from dawn to dusk what happens on a sidewalk all day. What are some of the things that happen so that you have an appreciation of them?
And she sort of talks about the 24-hour community with living and working
Mm-hmm.
in the same building or
Mhm.
in same space.
Exactly. And how some neighborhoods during the day or Monday through Friday, there might be stockbrokers that work there, but they all go home Saturday and Sunday. And so what happens on those streets on those days? Well, maybe there's a church in the neighborhood too. And so on Sunday mornings, people are coming to that church, or how these things all can balance each other out so that there's always some use and some users on the street, and always some activity and some liveliness to make neighborhoods really revitalized and support businesses and shops and stores. You can't have a restaurant if there's only people in your neighborhood one day a week or only over the lunch hour. There has to be a mix of things going on to really have sort of the vitality and interconnections and synergy to make real retail and streetscape places have vitality.
Can you think of an area in Urbana that meets that description?
Downtown Urbana is, I think, a place that has lots of different things happening. There are a number of churches nearby. There's a number of workplaces, different sorts of places, some that are retail shops that people are coming to, some that are just offices that have, people in cubicles and in office spaces that you don't need to see and aren't really retail oriented. And as more and more things happen in downtown Urbana, hopefully it is a synergy and we can revitalize more of that, and more people will come, and that'll let more shops be there, and then more people will come just for those, and things sort of multiply.
Good.
The last book I didn't bring with me, but I'll tell you what it is. It's called Asphalt Nation by Jane Holt Kay, and it is a book that covers the amazing history of cars in America, from the invention of the car through the highway building policies through today. And it tells amazing stories about how cars have reshaped the landscape, and when you read it, you really do look at your streets and your neighborhood differently, because you think, oh wow, these roads in my neighborhood are so much wider than those roads in that other old neighborhood that I love, because of these changes in cars and in priorities for moving cars through neighborhoods versus other things.
Versus moving people through neighborhoods.
Versus people and walkability and houses that are close to the street and the sidewalk, so that neighbors can sit on each other's porches and see each other. And so those priorities changed, and there are new strategies for building roads now that sort of harken back to what people were doing 150 years ago, and sort of the more traditional techniques for thinking about streets and public spaces. So Asphalt Nation by Jane Holt Kay.
And that's a nice tie with the Jane Jacobs book that you just mentioned.
Uh-huh.
Very nice tie. And give your website again where people can go and look at these titles.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you had connected to pages for all ages.
Yeah,
yes.
all of these titles, the titles and authors' names you can look on ward4.org.
Four as a number.
4 as a number. So you can open any web browser and go to ward4.org.
And knowing that Brandon was going to bring books to talk about today, I'll have Brandon hold this up.
Yeah, happily.
I thought I would mention one. This is a recently published book. The title is Job Scam by Greg Leroy. It's shining a little bit there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the essence of this book has to do with economic development, the many incentives that communities can offer to enhance economic development, and some of the major pitfalls that become communities because they have given away these incentives and what it does to drain the communities economically. So again, this is Job Scams, and it's Greg Leroy. And all of these books should be available in the public library or in the city planning library at the University of Illinois. Mm-hmm. Now that you got yourself started, first of all, why did you choose these particular books? What were they recommended?
D- there are a lot more books out there on these topics and a lot more that I've read or seen, but these are the books that I think, to me, if you read these three, complete the picture of opening people's eyes to critically thinking about how we design our public spaces. I don't know who originally made this comparison, but if you think about how much design energy and how much artistry and engineering and thought about how people use something, how much of all that goes into making something like an iPod. And that's one little tiny device. And it has so much of that thought and consideration so that people can use it in a good way. And then you compare that to our public spaces, our sidewalks and our streets and the steps of buildings and how we organize roads and cities. And you think about how great those spaces could be if that same energy of engineering and artistry and thought about how people use things and real attention to what makes something actually usable and user-friendly for a person, walkable or bike-friendly. If all of that thought and energy could be put into our public spaces the same way it's put into things like little iPod consumer products, wouldn't we have wonderful public spaces that we really enjoyed being in and seeing the people that we loved in and being with our coworkers in and meeting people in?
Okay, so you're Urbana King for a month.
Uh-huh.
What would you do to change some of the public spaces within from these books that you've read?
Well, some of the things are things that we're doing already or things we're doing already that I would do more. So let me share with you some King for a Month ideas. Yes. What would we do? One of them is making the city more bike-friendly, more walkable, and there are a lot of different concepts. You know, there's new urbanism and there's traditional neighborhood design, and we could talk about all these different things, but I'll start with one of them, which is called Complete Streets. There's all these names for these different movements, but the Complete Streets movement, I have a flyer here about Complete Streets, is a movement that asks that streets be designed completely for everybody. In other words, they aren't incomplete. They should be complete streets with a place for cars and a place for buses or transit and a place for walkers and a place for bikers, and that all of those sorts of audiences should be considered when designing a street or any highway project. And so there are a number of organizations nationally and in the state level advocating for complete streets. And this flyer that I just brought a sample of is one about a bill in the Illinois Senate, Senate Bill 508, which didn't get any action in the last legislature, and maybe it will next year in the spring session is when new bills will be introduced again. And the Complete Streets legislation asks that Illinois adopt the federal highway policy for complete streets, meaning that from the start of a project, when you start designing it, you consider what you're doing in that project to accommodate pedestrians, to accommodate bikes, as well as accommodating cars, as long as it's not unreasonable, as long as it doesn't add too much to the cost of a project, that all projects have thought for all of those kinds of users.
I know that you're interested in bicycle pathways, so as King for a month, where would you start putting bicycle pathways?
Well, we have a wonderful county project because, you know, maybe I could be King for a month in Urbana, but we have Champaign, and we have the university, and we have the county, and we have Muhammad and Lake of the Woods, and we have all sorts of other jurisdictions and groups to work with. So the County Greenways and Trails project is a project to organize and coordinate all of the efforts towards bikeability. And here is just one example of something from the 2004 report from the Greenways and Trails project. Here's an example of a map that has routes highlighted that you can see.
Those are the dark lines.
There are colored lines for special routes and little numbers for routes that have notes. Like note number 1 in here is about Lincoln Avenue and says that there are no good east-west crossing points over Lincoln Avenue. And these are all, these notes at the bottom of the map, just comments that were received from the public and put on the map to show what some of the public's concerns were, and then also to show priority routes that the cities and the university were interested in improving or adding a bike route there or adding some sort of amenity so that bikers could use that route. Or they'd be a trail where walkers or hikers could have a place to get from here to Danville, maybe along the old railroad track, or any of those possible projects. So the Greenways and Trails project is going, and I encourage people to go take the survey and submit their comments as well. And there's a link to that survey off of my website, which is ward4.org. And you can say, go on the survey and say, you know, this is one area of town where I don't have a path and I want one. Or say how you find the stoplights or the pedestrian crosswalks, and say what you'd like to be better. So that's one effort that I'm interested in Urbana, helping push our parts of the project and helping encourage all the other jurisdictions, the university and Champaign and the county and other municipalities, to work together on some of these trails that join us all together and let people get from their work to their home and stop off for some milk and eggs on the way, and all do that maybe without doing separate car trips to get there, but some other ways as well.
This information, if somebody fills out the survey, it goes to the county board, the RPC.
It goes to the Greenways and Trails staff, which is part of the RPC, the Regional Planning Commission in the county. And there's full-time staff that are just waiting to hear comments from people and that are constantly revising and updating these things as we learn more about what different projects might be happening and what priorities are.
Is there any movement on implementing this plan?
I can speak for Urbana. There is movement. We've, in this last year, applied for grants to help build bike paths along 130. It's clear that, the Walmart store will be open in January of '06 now there, and there will be some other development coming too. And so we really want that to be a place where people can walk and bike and get to the stores from their houses, maybe without making a car trip. So that's one place where we're working on the path, and that was part of the plan, and now we get to make it happen.
Excellent. You have some other plans and documents that you brought with you.
Yeah. Another example of a plan and of things that we can make happen and that I am interested in being part of making happen is the Downtown Strategic Plan. The Downtown Strategic Plan is the plan that I sort of mentioned. A couple of years ago, there was a consultant effort to look into what our downtown could be and how we could redevelop parts of our downtown that might now just be empty parking lots or not really used or vacant buildings, and make downtown a thriving place where people want to live, want to work, want to have their business. So this is one example of part of the downtown plan. This is a rendering of the area that's an entrance to Lincoln Square Mall by the U.S. Post Office. Mm-hmm. And I can switch the page and show you another picture, which is a picture of Broadway Avenue. And these are just pictures. I think pictures are one good way to see ideas. This is a picture looking north on Broadway, and the plan gave a lot of implementation steps for how the city and business owners and developers can all work together to help make this happen. And I hope that we get to some of the things that the council has planned to do are to actually make annual action plans to say that there are annual steps we'll take towards this vision of downtown, and create a downtown commission again, so that there's an actual group of citizens who are empowered to set priorities every year for what we should be doing in downtown.
If a community member wants to look at that plan, is it on the City of Urbana website, or do they have to stop by the library to look at it?
Either will work. It's on the city website, which is city.urbana.il.us, and it's also at the public library, the Urbana Free Library.
And this was done by what firm?
This was done with city staff and by a firm called Camiros, who are consultants in public spaces and land use, and was completed a couple years ago. So now it's really time to start taking action before before the plan gets old and collects dust on the shelf.
And what else did you bring?
One last plan that I can share with you is the comprehensive plan for the city. The comprehensive plan is a plan for not just downtown, but for all of the city and for how it can grow. And this is also something you can find on the city website or in the library. This was a 4-year effort, a wonderful effort to create a new plan for all areas of the city and for all neighborhoods and how they should grow by meeting with residents. There were resident meetings all over town for different neighborhood areas. At the time I lived in the Victory Park neighborhood, and so I went to that neighborhood group meeting, and the plan collected all sorts of input about what people wanted, how people got to work, how they'd like to, to get to school, and what kinds of stores or places they'd like around them. So this plan has wonderful pictures of how to make things happen and descriptions of action steps we can take, and is a consensus of what we heard from all the neighbors and everybody about what each area of town should be. There are pages of the plan that go piece by piece through all of town, and you can zoom into actually your block and the few blocks around you and see notes about some of the issues, how the area is changing, and how we want to have maybe some neighborhood business or maybe more stores or more vitality in certain areas of town.
Maybe you can explain to the people watching why a comprehensive plan is important to a community, any community.
The planning process brings out disagreements. And usually I think we think, oh, disagreements are bad. We should avoid disagreement. Well, that's absolutely wrong. I think the planning process is great because it actually brings out different perspectives, even disagreements, on what people want in their neighborhood, what they want near them, what they want to be able to walk to, or where they want to go to shop, and figures out, given these different perspectives and given what everybody wants, what is an agreed on plan? How can we put in writing what we all agree on together for our part of town, for our neighborhood, and for the whole town, for how we grow? And having that process, hearing from people who want something slightly different than you want, and actually having to come together and create an agreement, a plan for everybody to work together, is really a great process that once you're done with, now we have a plan and we can move ahead with actually implementing it and doing things, knowing that we've heard from everyone and that we are taking into account all the perspectives and all the input.
And how does this comprehensive plan relate to the zoning ordinance in Urbana?
The comprehensive plan is just a vision for how different areas of town might be used or what they might have, but it's not zoning, which is like a detailed parcel by parcel, what is allowed on this piece of land. That's what zoning is. And the comprehensive plan will be turned into a new zoning ordinance that we get to write next as one of the ways of implementing this vision.
So this will be a process that Urbana will be going through very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And how does the downtown plan that you just showed a few moments ago relate to this comprehensive plan?
The downtown plan is incorporated in part of it. So this comprehensive plan includes a description of what should happen downtown, and references all of the things that we learned and all of the visions we had in the comprehensive plan. So there are future land use maps, and let's see, it looks like map 10 or map 8 might be ones I could show you that would show you parts of downtown. Yeah, here is map 8, and I know it's very hard to see, and I'll try to zoom in to give you some example of what's on this map, but these are maps broken down by all of town. And so here's a note for downtown about what the specific issues with this part of the city are and what we want to do there.
And how can a citizen come to the city council to encourage that these plans not just sit on the shelf, but become an active document for the community?
Well, in Urbana, any citizen is welcome to come any week and speak. Everybody is allowed a chance to speak at the beginning of council meetings, and we take seriously public input and public comments. And when people come and say they want something, we try to answer them while they're here. We try to listen to them and start acting on the things that people want. So I encourage anybody to come anytime, or to email or call their representatives, but also to watch the agendas on the website and watch what's happening, because there are great things happening and ways to get involved. One of them just in the next few weeks that people may have heard of, and if you don't act this week or next, you might miss it,
That's right.
is the Big Small All series of first meetings that are happening, that are community dialogues about what you want your community to be. And these are happening all over town, all over the county, at different places. And this is one way for citizens to be able to show up, and there's meeting facilitators and everything they need so that people can help draw out citizens' ideas and sort of formulate visions for our county 50 or 20 or 100 years from now.
It's good that you mentioned that. I just facilitated one from 11:30 to 1:30 today at the Mass Transit Building, and over 200 people came to share their ideas, which
that is
now
wonderful.
Are prioritized in part of this whole collection of data that you just mentioned, that the consultants will then take back and sort through and bring them back after the first of the year to present to the community. So this is a great opportunity for the residents to share their ideas, not just the residents of Urbana who worked with you on the comprehensive plan. This is a county-wide effort for the whole county.
And I've heard wonderful stories that, at every one of these meetings, great ideas come out of the people who show up. Like, we need a community center, we need a place to hang out after school that's safe, or we want our neighborhood to be one where we can bike in safely. And I'm sure there's 100 or 200 such ideas from the session you had. I really encourage people to attend them quickly.
And you have on that the list of the upcoming sessions. Maybe you can just very quickly zero in on that so people can see the remaining opportunities to participate.
Here are the list of sessions.
They're the last 4.
Here are the last 4 sessions. So if you manage to get involved in November and catch some of these, that's wonderful. If not, there will be more stages of the planning process, and there's always something going on even after this round of Big Small All is over. I really encourage people to watch the newspaper and watch what's happening and come to public meetings and ask for what you want.
Well, from all your descriptions, a lot seems to be happening as king for the month, but we don't see much actually on the street. How can that change?
Well, there is a lot happening. Some of it's hidden. Things that I think are especially hidden are like Lincoln Square. There's been a lot happening at Lincoln Square to make it a more vital place and make things happen there. And some of them are on the second floor and underground and in new hallways that haven't been there before. And so even though a lot's happening and a lot's in the works, you can't quite see it yet. And I think that in the next year, some of those things will change. But there's also more we should be doing. And citizen planners, the public getting involved to ask for and push for things they want are things that can make even more of this great stuff happen.
Are all of the commissions and committees in Urbana filled, or can citizens express an interest in being appointed to a committee or a commission?
Citizens can express an interest. I don't offhand know a list of vacancies, but the mayor's office does all of the appointments and is always interested in hearing from people who want to serve. And there are new commissions like the Downtown Commission, which will be recreated, and a Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission.
Okay.
which is going to be created. Those are commissions that are part of the Urbana Council goals document that the new city council wrote together and said one of our goals is that we create and get these commissions going to help drive what's happening in downtown or help facilitate bike and pedestrian friendliness in projects throughout the city. So those are new commissions where we're interested in hearing from people, and people can contact the mayor or email myself, either one, if you're interested in serving, and we'll pass that along. And we really do want people
Maybe you'll list some of that on your website.
Hold on just a second. The battery just went out. I'm just gotta plug this
Okay.
back in.
How are we doing on time?
You're fine. It's
Okay.
11:45. Okay, you were talking about the website.
You just mentioned 2 new commissions. Are you planning to add that to your website information so your constituents can check there for the information?
Yeah, I'll add that. And when I think we might do an email or do some announcements at City Council to officially call for applicants and get names.
Very good. I know of 2 other interests that you have, one being green construction.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can kind of define green construction so people understand what you're going to then describe.
Yeah, another one of the movements, like Complete Streets or like New Urbanism, another movement is the green construction movement, which is sweeping the country because cities, governments, private entities have learned that you actually save money and make more healthy, more efficient workplaces when you employ building technologies that are energy efficient so that you're not wasting energy or letting it all just float out through the roof or through the windows, or have sunlight in the workplaces so that workers, have daylight and actually work better with natural lighting, or the airflow is good, or the materials are recyclable or biodegradable or don't have volatile organic compounds in them, so that people won't get sick when they come in the building because of things that were used during construction. So all these facets of how a building is built and how it can be healthy for the people to use and healthy for the environment and save money by being energy efficient are part of the green construction movement.
Is Urbana going to be passing an ordinance concerning green construction?
One of the council goals is to study green building technologies and policies that we could implement so that here in Urbana, city buildings could potentially use more environmentally friendly technologies, and also that we could encourage private builders and private individuals when they build homes to use new technologies. One of the things the city is planning on doing specifically in the next few years is to create a neighborhood of affordable housing that uses some of the environmentally friendly technologies so that the houses are energy efficient. And you can heat the house with a hairdryer. That's the saying. There's a group called the Eco Lab, which is a not-for-profit community housing developer, and they have built one model house already that periodically has tours through it so people can see it and learn about the technology. And they say you can heat the house with a hairdryer, and it uses about 10% of the energy that a typical house uses. And they want that home to be a model when other affordable housing is built and when the city gets involved in other housing projects, so that people can reduce their energy bills and won't have, spikes in heating costs in the winter or when heating oil goes up. Energy prices are rising, and utilities are limited, fossil fuels are limited, and it's time for us to be ready and be efficient in how we use the world's resources.
That was one of the comments that surfaced in the group that I was facilitating today in the visioning process. It was more specifically focused on encouraging the development of wind farms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is the city of Urbana interested in encouraging the development of wind farms.
Well, I'm interested in it. I think wind technology in Illinois is something that we want to foster. There's two exciting things I've heard about. One is that the U of I recently got maybe a $2 million grant to create a wind farm or a demonstration project somewhere on the south end of campus.
One wind turbine.
One wind turbine. So I'm really excited to see that happening and to, people get a demonstration project and then they see what's possible. A second thing is that one of Urbana's newest parks, Weaver Park, which is some land that was acquired in the last year or so by the Park District, will have a demonstration wind turbine at it as well. The current concept for the park is still in the works, but the park will have a number of places for education about environmental issues. There will be bioswales and a wetland at the park and native prairie plants and a number of really innovative things. One of them is an actual wind turbine to help educate people about wind power generation, and they're working that into the design of the park.
If they put up just one more wind turbine, you would generate all the energy that's needed for Urbana.
Really, one wind turbine?
No, one more.
Oh.
Two wind turbines
Two is enough for Urbana?
Is enough to generate the energy for Urbana.
That's amazing.
Let's
do it.
That's a goal for the city of Urbana. I do also know that you've been interested in putting together a group to go visit the Green Technologies building that the city of Chicago established.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about what the people would learn by visiting that building?
Yeah, there's a great building that demonstrates green technologies in Chicago. It's, I think, an old factory or warehouse kind of building that got completely reused and redeveloped and has amazing demonstrations of some neat technology, like a parking lot that has a permeable surface so that the water, instead of having to run off into a separate sewer system, can drain through the surface, and that it doesn't have to be made out of asphalt with fossil fuels, that it can be made out of biodegradable things or things from trees. And the roof has, I think, green stuff growing on it. It's a green roof, which means that it helps deflect more of the sun's energy, and it helps in the energy efficiency of the building and helps in rainwater, so that you don't just have a flat surface that all the rain has to drain off right the minute that it falls onto. And energy efficiency with windows and a bunch of other stuff that I haven't even heard about yet. So I'm really excited in taking a tour there. I hope early in 2006 we get to go. And Patsy and I have been talking about this. I hope that a group of maybe students from the U of I who are interested, and professors, and city officials, and staff, and members of the public who want to advocate for this could get on a bus and go up there.
Yes, they have 3-story water tanks that they collect all of the water off the roof and recycle the water
Wow.
into
It's
the
used
building.
maybe as gray water for flushing toilets.
toilets.
Or
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's a totally sustainable building, so it would be a very educational tour. It's a very good idea that you have. Another aspect of planning that you've expressed an interest is form-based codes.
Mm-hmm. Form-based codes is a new strategy for writing zoning ordinances and writing building codes than the current strategies of the past. Right now, our zoning ordinance has pieces in it that some of which are 50 years old or so, and form-based codes is just one of the new concepts that has been introduced. And the book Suburban Nation that I mentioned earlier is a great book that describes what this might mean. Form-based codes mean that when we write a code for how our city grows, we think of how suburban or how urban a place is in a different way. We show visually how buildings might look rather than describing the whole thing in text. We talk about the form of the building, the actual shape of the building and how it relates to other buildings in the street, rather than just talking about zoning and the land use and saying, well, it's allowed to be a grocery store, but not saying anything else about how the grocery store will fit the street and the sidewalk and fit the neighborhood.
So that integrates into the design factor that you also talked about. And um, was that in Suburban Nation that you mentioned about design, that Duane talks so much about
Mm-hmm.
that in relationship to what a community looks like and the quality of life of the
Yeah.
community? Um, since we have basically three communities that are sort of vying for the economic development and aspects Savoy, Champaign, and Urbana,
Mm-hmm.
how would Urbana respond to a common comprehensive plan for the three communities?
Oh, I think that would be wonderful if the county, or if at a larger regional level, we had a comprehensive plan for how to grow together, and we could coordinate all of the planning that we're doing independently. I think that would make, make a savings and make efficiency and make um, good cooperation for everyone in the region. Because, when I go to work and then run a few errands and go to a meeting and stop off for some groceries on the way home, I'm not just doing it in the little box of Urbana. I'm going onto campus and I'm crossing Wright Street and going into Champaign, and I'm visiting family and friends out in the county. And so all of us travels through all these jurisdictions. When we're talking about planning, it only makes sense to work together.
So is that something you're going to propose at the next council meeting?
No, I think the county is currently doing some things with their zoning ordinance and talking about comprehensive planning, and they have to finish with what they're doing. We have to figure out when the time is right, um, but actually having the county do a more thorough comprehensive plan would be a wonderful thing. And I think Big Small All is one related goal. It isn't just so focused on land and how we use the land. It's really more broad about what we all want and how we all want to live in this county. But um, that's one effort that can hopefully be an entryway into more comprehensive planning for all of us that's coordinated.
As a longtime resident of the community, what is the the biggest change that you have seen?
I think the biggest change is a change in mindset and a change in learning what we want and how to have places that are attractive and interesting and livable. Some of the books I talked about, like Asphalt Nation or The Death and Life of Great American Cities, really chronicle how we kind of lost touch with how to build places that people would actually want to be, places that are livable and walkable and safe. That we lost touch with that when we kind of radically changed the growth patterns of our country, especially after World War II, when we were building a lot of houses really quickly because people were coming home from the war and settling down and having families. And there was a post-World War II housing boom that had some characteristics of sprawl to it. And the word sprawl came into being, and we started to think afterwards, wait, what did we do when we built all that housing and we had streets that were curvy and really wide and big, houses that were separated really far away from the street. And when we took out the sidewalks and gave up on those altogether, or created dead ends and cul-de-sacs, and when we separated out places of work from places of housing and kind of segregated or homogenized our public places by just having one whole tract of housing, separate from one whole tract of work, separate from one whole tract of the businesses, separate from the place we shop, which is in a whole nother tract. We kind of lost touch with how to build places that people want to be during that housing boom and during that sprawl period. And to answer your question about what have I seen change lately, we're now learning to appreciate some of what we had 100 years ago, some of smaller, more intimate, walkable neighborhoods, some mixed use areas, meaning there will be a residential use and a business use on the same street maybe, or there will be a store downstairs and a residence upstairs, or even just stores close enough to our house so that we can get to them and we don't have to leave our homogenized housing neighborhood and go down a big street and enter the homogenized retail neighborhood in order to get to a place to buy something. So the biggest thing I see is that we are learning again how to make public places that are places people would want to be.
You are picking up on 2 points that were the summary points of, again, this visioning process today, and one is great concern about the sprawl on the perimeter of the community, and the second is more neighborhood shopping, so people don't have to do what you just described. So how would Urbana go about minimizing any further sprawl in their southeast area and the northeast area of Urbana?
Well, I think first off, you're exactly right. People do want to be able to walk to places to buy things, and people do now question the sprawl because it just keeps going and leapfrogging and creates places that really people don't want to be because there's nothing there for them to do. There isn't a vitality and a mix of things and other places to go. And to go anywhere, if you're a kid, you know, you have to cross a huge 6-lane street or something. People have started to see that that isn't quite what they want and to ask for walking to stores and biking and things that they do want. And that's really exciting because now we're figuring out how to do that again. And the practitioners are looking back at cities of 100 years ago and ways of building and designing public spaces. So how do we do it? I think by following up on our comprehensive plan with a zoning ordinance that lets us use some of these new concepts, by working towards the downtown strategic plan. There's a whole list of action items, and I'm really excited that in the next year we're going to be starting the downtown commission again so that people can be driving that process. So we have great lists in some of our planning documents of all of the action steps needed, and it's time to dig in.
So time for the citizens of Urbana to arrive at the Monday night city council meetings and help the city council decide how to prioritize which of these many things to start doing immediately.
Definitely.
Yesterday.
Yes.
Yesterday. Yeah. Would you please give your website again for those who have joined us after the program started?
Yeah, my website, where the books and links to things I've been talking about are, is ward4.org. So it's WARD, the number 4.org.
And many of the books that Brandon has mentioned today can be found in the public libraries and at the City Planning Library at the University of Illinois. And again, I remind people that any resident of the state of Illinois is welcome to use the University of Illinois Library. Brandon, thank you again for spending this time with me and
this was great.
Community planning conversations.
Yeah, let's keep the conversation going.
Exactly.